What if Saitama was no longer the strongest, but the most hunted? Imagine this, a quiet evening in Beach City. The sky suddenly fractures, not with an enemy, but with fear. Because across the universe, something impossible has happened. Every gem, every fusion, every cosmic entity has received the same signal. Target located, and the name attached? Saitama. Even Steven Universe feels it, a crushing weight in his chest. Not danger, but inevitability. Because this isn't a normal hunt. This is a universe that has decided Saitama should not exist. No warnings, no negotiations, no holding back. Just one rule, bring him down or be erased trying, and for the first time in his life, Saitama might actually have to try. Garnet had never walked into a room blind. The others didn't know that. They thought her suffocating calm was wisdom. They thought she was just fundamentally built to absorb pressure. They didn't understand that her calm was simply the luxury of already holding the receipt for tomorrow, until 800 hours. She had reached forward into the temporal slipstream, a biological reflex, as thoughtless and automatic as breathing. Her third eye slammed into a brick wall. Not a bad outcome, not a branching timeline, not the violent shifting static of a volatile variable. Nothing, a dead signal, a white room with all the oxygen sucked out. She stood frozen on the warp pad, the sudden violent vertigo of the sensory amputation threatening to unfuse her on the spot. Ruby's panic and Sapphire's ice collided violently in her chest. For the first time in 6,000 years, Garnet felt the cold, ugly spike of genuine, uncalculated terror. She marched into the temple's war room. She didn't gently place her hands on the table. She braced her entire weight against it. The crystalline surface physically groaned under her palms. Pearl looked up, a hard light schematic instantly dissolving in her hands.
Amethyst froze, a half-eaten car battery dangling from her jaw. "I can't see him," Garnet said. Her voice was stripped of its usual melodic resonance. It was a dry, hollow rasp.
I don't know what happens next. The air pressure in the room vanished. In 6 millennia, she had never uttered that sentence. She had never had to. Pearl's eyes widened, the projection of her physical form actually glitching for a fraction of a second. The lunar sea spire memorial, Pearl swiped a trembling hand through the air. The holographic security feed violently booted up. A bald human in a cheap, mustard yellow jumpsuit, hands stuffed deep into his pockets. He was walking through the ancient, battle-hardened quartz ruins, looking aggressively bored. He stopped to examine a towering, indestructible support pillar. He let out a sigh. Then, he leaned against it. Just the idle, slumping weight of a man waiting for a bus. The pillar didn't crack. It instantly pulverized into fine, white powder under the impossible, localized gravity of his casual posture. The entire upper memorial violently collapsed. The human just blinked, coughing slightly, and dusted the debris off his cape. Neither had the 4 structures connected to it. Neither, it turned out, had the geological shelf beneath them, which was now 30 feet further into the ocean floor than it had been yesterday. He didn't even look back, Amethyst said quietly. He was reading the carvings, Steven said from the doorway. Everyone turned. He was holding his own tablet. Footage from a different angle, zoomed in on Saitama's face in the moment before impact. Reading. Genuinely, curiously reading the ancient gem script carved into the stone, with the focused frown of someone trying to understand something in a language they almost recognize. He wasn't threatening us, Steven said. He was curious. The structure is gone, Steven. Pearl's voice was careful and tight. That memorial stood for 8,000 years. The gems off-world are already sending transmissions. They think. I know what they think. Silence. Steven set the tablet down. His pink scar, the one that appeared when his powers destabilized, when the grief and the pressure and the old trauma pressed too close to the surface, flickered once at his temple and faded. He noticed Pearl notice it. "We're not going to fight him," he said. "No," Garnet agreed. And then, for the first time in Steven's memory, she paused before continuing. A real pause, not for effect, not for gravity, for uncertainty. "But we are going to find him, because I can't see what he does next." She looked at each of them in turn. "And I need to be in the room when it happens." Pearl straightened. Amethyst cracked her knuckles. The holographic display shifted from the wreckage footage to a topographic map of the coastline. a single yellow figure moving slowly along the northern cliffs, stopping occasionally to look at things. Just look at things. Steven stared at the map, at the figure, at the empty data field still hovering beside it. Don't let him get bored. He'd said that like it was a strategy. Now it felt like a countdown. All right, he said quietly, to himself as much as anyone. Let's go understand him before we're afraid of him. 11 minutes to the northern cliffs. Total, suffocating silence. Amethyst usually bled noise into dead air. Not today. She had watched the security loop 3 times in the warp stream, the lean, the pillar pulverizing, the 3,000-ton obsidian shelf dropping into the abyssal trench. But the part that made her gem hum with anxiety wasn't the destruction. It was the face he made while doing it. The blank, vacant squint of a guy trying to read a blurry warning sign. She had seen corrupted monsters wreck gem tech out of pure screaming rage. She had never seen something do it just by existing too heavily. Pearl marched with her holopad raised, running deep-spectrum bioscans every 40 seconds. 0 output, not a cloaked signature, not a distorted read, just a localized dead void where a biological entity should be. She stopped announcing the failures after the 3rd attempt. Her knuckles were bone white around the edges of the screen. The silence was loud enough. Garnet led the wedge behind her visors. She couldn't stop reaching. It was a phantom limb reflex. She kept violently throwing her consciousness forward, desperate for a single foothold in the timeline. Dead air, white room, nothing. The temporal whiplash was giving her a blinding physical migraine. She forced herself to stop looking at tomorrow and locked her eyes on the dirt, one heavy boot in front of the other. They found him at the edge. A mustard yellow jumpsuit sitting on a jagged outcrop, his legs casually dangling over a 200-foot sheer drop into the churning surf. He was slouching. He didn't twitch when their boots hit the gravel. He didn't look over his shoulder. Either his hearing was terrible, or he simply didn't care. Pearl was rapidly learning that, with him, those two things produced the exact same tactical posture. Steven raised a fist. His fingers were shaking. Hold. The gems silently fanned out behind a ridge of limestone, 12 meters back. Standard tactical spacing. Close enough to observe, far enough to give them a 3-second decision window before he could close the gap. Theoretically, Amethyst leaned to Steven's ear. His cape is moving wrong. What? The wind's going left. His cape is going right. She squinted. He's not. I don't think he's affected by wind. Like it's touching him, but not. She searched for the word. Committing. Pearl made a sound that was almost a word and then wasn't. Steven watched Saitama reach down and pick up a small stone from the cliff beside him. Turn it over. Set it back down with a care that seemed completely at odds with a man who had accidentally sunk a geological shelf that morning. He was reading the carvings. He put the stone back. Something about that kept mattering to Steven in a way he couldn't fully articulate. The way certain things matter before you understand why. The way your body knows the answer before your mind catches up. He's not destructive, Steven said quietly. He's just... He watched Saitama tilt his head at a passing seabird with the expression of someone who found the concept of birds mildly interesting. Operating at a scale he can't turn off. That's worse, Pearl said immediately. I know. Garnet hadn't moved. She was watching Saitama the way she watched things when her future vision was working. Cataloging, measuring, building the architecture of a person from their smallest movements. Except now she was doing it blind. And that meant she was doing what the rest of them did. What Steven had done his whole life before he understood his powers, before the diamonds, before the weight of being half human, half something ancient settled into him like sediment. She was guessing. Steven felt something shift in his chest, not his scar, not the old pink instability. Something quieter. The recognition of someone else standing in uncertainty for the first time and not knowing what their own face looks like when they're afraid. He stood up from behind the ridge. Steven Pearl reached for his arm. I'm just going to talk to him. That is precisely what concerns me. But he was already walking, hands visible, no shield, no weapon. The way you approach something you're choosing to trust before you have evidence for it. The way his mother had once walked toward a planet of enemies with open hands, and the way that had almost destroyed everything, and the way it had also, eventually, saved it. Saitama heard the footsteps at 4 meters. He turned around. He looked at Steven with eyes that were tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. The exhaustion of someone who had wanted something for so long that they'd forgotten what wanting felt like, and now simply existed in the space where desire used to live. Steven raised a hand. Half wave, half surrender. Hi, he said. Saitama blinked. Hey, he said, like he hadn't spoken to anyone in a while, and was checking that his voice still worked. Behind the ridge, 3 gems watched in complete silence. Pearl's scanner hovered, unread. Garnet pressed once more into the white room with no doors, found nothing, and for the first time in 14,000 years, let's go.